What is going on, guys? Check out MaddenMobileCoins.com for some of the fastest and cheapest coins out there and use my code ELITE for 10% off. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to a brand new series that I'm going to be calling Fantasy Football Friday, and as you can probably guess from the title, it's basically just going to be me sitting down with you guys for a couple minutes talking about different fantasy football stuff. So for this first episode, we're doing the top 10 running back rankings of 2017. I'm guessing a lot of you guys like fantasy football as well, just mainly because obviously this is a Madden channel, so it has a lot to do with football. And the reason I haven't posted much Madden recently is, I don't know, just because in summer the game really slows down, people stop really playing it more, plus my account was hacked, and that really made me stop playing the game just because I was really depressed about that for a while. But I do plan on doing some team update videos and some season score videos a lot more recently now. I'm going to try to get on that soon, but for now I want to do a lot of fantasy football stuff, so every Friday look out for a fantasy football video. But yeah, for now let's get into this top 10 running back rankings list. Let's talk about some running backs. Here we go. Alright guys, for the number 1 spot on my top 10 list, I had to go with David Johnson, the beast from the Arizona Cardinals. This guy puts up insane results on the football field as well as on the stat sheet. So I had to go with him in my number 1 spot, although it is really tough because LeVeon Bell is right up there with David Johnson, but I'll get to that in a reason why David Johnson beats him out just by a little bit, even though LeVeon Bell last season was on pace to put up better numbers. But like I said, I'll get back to that. But David Johnson, last year the dude had 1,239 rushing yards, 12 rushing touchdowns. He had 789 receiving yards and 4 receiving touchdowns. The guy is basically, he's basically separately a decent running back and a decent wide receiver, but together he just makes for the most insane fantasy player out there. He has insane rushing stats and insane passing stats put together. The dude is a beast. In terms of where to draft this guy, either draft him first overall, and if he happens to fall to you second overall, make sure you're taking him because he has very low injury history. I don't even know if he's missed a game in his career due to injury. His weakness, though, I would say, is that he plays for the Arizona Cardinals. Their offense isn't exactly the most dynamic offense in the world. His offensive line is average at best, so watch out for that, but he can get around it. He knows how to beat defenses. And like I said, his biggest strength is most likely the fact that he is literally a wide receiver and a running back. He does so much. The dude had 20 touchdowns last year. You can't deny that. An absolute beast on the field, an absolute beast just to watch, and that's another reason to take him. Just watching him on Sunday makes it so much fun to have him on your team, so that's why, for me, David Johnson's number 1. And let me know what you guys think down below, and let's get on to the number 2 pick. Alright, and as expected, coming in the number 2 spot, we have the beast, LeVeon Bell. I mean, I'm a Steelers fan, but I'm trying to be not biased about this. He has to be number 2 or number 1 on any rankings list just because when he's on the field, he is an absolute monster. Like I said before, last season, if he would have played a full 16-game season, he was on pace to get more yards than David Johnson would have, which is just crazy to think about. For example, last year he had 1,268 rushing yards, 7 rushing touchdowns, 616 receiving yards, and 2 receiving touchdowns, and that's playing 3 less games than David Johnson. So if the guy was on the field for 3 more games than that, who knows what he would have done. I mean, where to draft him, either take him first overall if you're a LeVeon Bell fan, even if you think he won't get suspended or have another injury. But if he lands to you and you're the second overall pick, you're taking LeVeon Bell. And if for some reason, if he falls beyond that, you have to take LeVeon Bell despite the risks. You just have to. He's just such a dynamic talent. And like I said before, his weakness is the fact that he's been suspended and injured a lot. He's had a couple of knee injuries. He just had a knee surgery, which is a little worrying, especially with the running back. And he's been suspended a couple of times. He has appealed one of them, and just last season he had a 4-game suspension, which he broke down to a 3-game suspension. Let's just face it, the dude likes to smoke weed, which is not good for an NFL player. Which you know, that's also dangerous to look out for. But hopefully he's maturing a little bit. And his overall strength is just the fact that he's also, like David Johnson, a receiver and a running back, and he's just very patient in the backfield. So a really good running back that I would suggest taking first or second overall. It's really up to you guys, and let's get on to number 3. And for number 3, we have the rookie of last season, Zeke Elliott, who put up absolutely crazy numbers for a rookie behind that awesome offensive line of his. He had 1,631 rushing yards last season, 15 rushing touchdowns, also with around 400 receiving yards and 1 touchdown. Really, really good numbers, especially for a rookie, but that offensive line does really help him. And in terms of where to draft him, normally it depends in PPR leagues, which is point per reception leagues. He's worth a little bit less. So in standard leagues, you could make a case for him to be drafted above David Johnson or LeVeon Bell. But I'd say he's definitely safe to draft 3rd or 4th overall. I know in any leagues that I would have the 3rd pick in, I would 100% take Zeke Elliott, and especially if I'm the 4th pick and if he falls to me, you have to take Zeke Elliott there too. So yeah, where to draft him, like I said, 3rd pick, 4th pick, and the weaknesses of his is the lack of his involvement in the passing game. So in PPR leagues, like I said, he's worth a little bit less, but that's not a huge deal. His strength, though, is that the offense is just straight up built around him. The offensive line is absolutely insane. It's one of the best in the NFL. Pretty sure it actually is ranked like legit 2nd in the NFL, so very good offensive line. Dak Prescott and him they have a little connection going on there with both being rookies last year. And also, Dez Bryant's coming back this year, hopefully to have another full season, so hopefully that takes some pressure off Zeke Elliott for him to be able to do a little bit better as well. So Zeke Elliott is a strong option. He really doesn't have much of an injury history either. He hasn't played very long. He's got nice, young, fresh legs, so he should be good in that department. So Zeke Elliott is one of the most safest picks, in my opinion, you can take early in the draft. So Zeke Elliott, good pick, and let's get on to my number 4 spot. And coming in the number 4 spot, we have Shady McCoy himself, Mr. LeSean McCoy. He had a really good season last year after a lot of people were thinking he wasn't going to do very well. Last year, he was generally taken as a 2nd or 3rd round pick, but he exploded to have a top 3 running back season, played really, really well, and last year he put up 1,267 rushing yards, 13 rushing touchdowns, complete with 350 receiving yards and 1 touchdown in the receiving area. And I don't know, people even this year are starting to doubt him, that his age is going to get to him and his involvement's going to slow down. But I am strong on LeSean McCoy this season. Even the coach of the Bills is strong on him as well, because he did say over the offseason that he plans to get LeSean McCoy involved in the offense a lot more, and especially in the passing game, which is really exciting for anyone in a point per reception league, because that means for every catch LeSean McCoy catches, that gets you an extra point for your fantasy team. So I know that LeSean McCoy is the 4th running back I'll be targeting in my drafts, and honestly, if I have the 5th pick in any of my leagues, I'm going to be taking LeSean McCoy, because 4th, obviously, Antonio Brown has to go in there before LeSean McCoy, but 5th or more, I'm taking LeSean McCoy all the way. The only weakness he might have is the fact that his injuries. He hasn't been that injured, but he is getting older, so the injury risk is there. Plus, he is going to be 29 or 30 this year, so that's a little bit risky as well. But yeah, the overall strength that the offense wants to involve him more, and he's just a crazy running back in general, makes me want to take LeSean McCoy early in fantasy drafts. So take him. If he falls to the 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th pick, make sure you're picking him up, especially because running backs are really hard to get this year. A lot of running back committees, so that makes it tough to find good ones who are going to be getting a lot of touches. So I would say LeSean McCoy is a good safe pick in your fantasy drafts. And for number 5, I have a bit of an interesting pick here for you guys. I have Devonta Freeman as my fifth running back, and it might be a little surprising to you guys, but last year he only had 1,076 rushing yards, but he did have 11 rushing touchdowns. In terms of receiving, he did pretty well with 462 receiving yards with 2 receiving touchdowns. He's honestly, a lot of people are low on Devonta Freeman this year. He's generally being taken in the late 1st round, early 2nd round. If you can get him down around there, it's honestly a steal of a pick. The only worry with Devonta Freeman is that they have Tevin Coleman down there as their backup running back, so he's going to take some goal line touches, but in general, Devonta Freeman is the guy that's going to be getting most of the touches everywhere else in the field. He's going to be catching the passes, he's going to be running the balls in terms of the running backs. So Devonta Freeman is the guy, and honestly, after Shady McCoy, all these running backs down here are generally in the same tier. But I think Devonta Freeman is just a little bit higher than the other guys, just because of, I don't know, he's just the way he plays on the field. He just has a solid game that I like the way he plays. And this year, I'm predicting that he's going to have over 1,200 rushing yards, around the same amount of touchdowns, 10 or so rushing touchdowns, maybe more, maybe upwards of 12. And I think the passing game he increases. I bet he gets up to potentially 500 receiving yards, and the same 2 or 3 receiving touchdowns. And if he produces those numbers, that is easily a good pick that you can pick up at the end of the first round, early second round, if you're right around the turnaround there. In 12-man leagues, that is. When I say that, that means 12-man leagues. And yeah, Devonta Freeman, solid option for your fantasy leagues. And let's get on to number 6. And for number 6, we have another rookie coming in my number 6 spot. It is Jordan Howard. The guy last year exploded in a pretty weak Chicago offense, which makes it more impressive. He had 1,300 rushing yards, only 6 rushing touchdowns, which should increase as his career continues. And receiving, he didn't really receive too many balls, but he had 298 receiving yards with 1 receiving touchdown. So his receiving game could improve a little bit. But in standard leagues where point per reception isn't a factor, he's a really solid running back pick. And especially because running backs this year are hard to find. There really is no backup running backs that can take away time from him. So Jordan Howard is a good workhorse guy in a new and upcoming offense. Where you can get him generally, he's going in the late first, early second round, right around, the turnaround, the 9, 10, 11, 12 spots. And then maybe even as late as the 13, 14, 15 picks. If you can get him that low, he is a steal. The only thing that worries me about him is that he's the only offensive weapon in Chicago. So defenses can easily counter his skill by just stacking the defensive line. But hopefully Jordan Howard can get around that and show how good of a talent he is. And if he's able to do that, he's going to have another incredible fantasy year. And if you're willing to take the risk on a guy in a not-so-decent offense, I'd say Jordan Howard is the guy for you. And yeah, let's get on to my number 7 pick. And coming in at number 7, we have another player who just broke out for the first time in his career last season. It is Melvin Gordon of the new LA Chargers. And he had a decent season last year with just under 1,000 rushing yards. He had 997 rushing yards, 10 rushing touchdowns, 419 receiving yards with 2 receiving touchdowns. So the guy was very good last year. He did have some injury issues, but it wasn't a huge factor. And he's going generally in the late first, early second round, so he's a decent pickup if you can score him down there. I wouldn't take him too early though. I would not take him, before the 8th pick or anything like that. But if he falls down to the end of the first round, I am definitely going to be grabbing Melvin Gordon. He's definitely involved heavily in the passing game, and I think that the Chargers offense this year is going to be something to look at just because Phil Rivers is going to be there. Obviously, Keenan Allen is coming back. Melvin Gordon's going to be down there, and they're just going to have a lot of offensive firepower, so it's going to be tough for defenses to guard all of them, which I think will give a lot of opportunity to Melvin Gordon, making him, a solid fantasy option. So if you can get Melvin Gordon in the first round, in the very end, and if you can even get him in the second round, if he falls to the second round, make sure you're getting Melvin Gordon. He's going to be a good pick, and he should be good this year. I'm going to assume he gets over 1,000 rushing yards without any injuries, right around 10 touchdowns again. In receiving, he can probably get around the same again, 400 receiving yards this year. If he can do that, I'll be happy if he ends up on my team in my fantasy leagues, and you guys should be too. And let's get on to pick number 8. And for number 8, we have another player that just broke out for the first time in his career last season. It is Ajayi of the Miami Dolphins. Last year, he went ahead and had himself a crazy year. 1,272 rushing yards, 8 rushing touchdowns. And in terms of receiving, this guy doesn't really do much at all. Only 150 receiving yards with no touchdowns in that end, but that's fine. I mean, he's a workhorse running back, and something kind of crazy that the coach said about him this offseason, or rather, the offensive coordinator said, is that they intend to get him around 350 touches this season, which is an absolutely insane amount. It's such a high number of touches for a running back. So basically what that tells us is that they intend to use Ajayi a ton in this next upcoming season, and even if Ajayi decides to just turn everything off and be awful this year, even with that many touches, even if he decides to be terrible, he can still rack up good numbers just on usage alone. So that's why I'm taking Ajayi, or at least I'm going to try to in a lot of my fantasy leagues. Generally, the great thing about him, he's being drafted in the mid to late second round, so there's really not too much risk in taking him because there's going to be guaranteed production. The one thing that does scare me though is that last year his numbers were padded a little bit because he had 2 or 3 games where he had 200 rushing yards. So it's not like he's going to be doing that a ton this season or anything like that, but if he produces decent numbers, he might not have the same season he had last season, but he's going to put up good numbers, like I said, with all the touches he's going to get. So target him in the late second round, and you should be good to go with Ajayi. And let's look at pick number 9. And coming in at number 9, we have a rookie that's actually going to be new this year. It is Leonard Fournette of the Jaguars, and it's definitely tough to predict how rookies are going to do, but looking at this guy in college, you can tell he's going to be a beast on the NFL turf as well. The greatest part about him, he's being drafted late, generally in the 3rd round. Sometimes people who like him take him like in the late 2nd if he falls down to that. Or even in the mid-2nd round, people are taking him. But if Leonard Fournette falls down to like the 3rd round, anywhere in the 3rd round, I would be willing to take this guy and take the risk on Leonard Fournette. I wouldn't like him to be my number 1 running back, but if you land him as your number 2 running back behind someone like, LeSean McCoy or any of those guys I said before, if you can land him behind them, if you stack 2 running backs like that, you are going to be in really good shape. The really only weakness about him is that he's really just young and unproven, and we don't exactly know what's going to happen, but we can assume he's going to be a beast because in college, he was all over the place. He was playing all kinds of positions, and he was just tearing up the field, game in, game out. So I would not be afraid to take Leonard Fournette. Even if he ends up being your number 1 running back, that's not a huge problem. He should put up great numbers this year, and you should find some success with Leonard Fournette. And let's get on to pick number 10, the last pick in my lineup here. Alright, for my number 10 pick, you guys might find this as a shock, but I'm including Isaiah Crowell of the Cleveland Browns in my list at number 10, just barely making it in. Last year, he hit under the radar with his stats. He had 944 rushing yards with 7 touchdowns, and he also had 319 receiving yards, no touchdowns there for the receiving game, but very low level, off the radar stuff, but he yet putting together a really good season. And he's really going low in drafts. I mean, he's going in the late 3rd, early 4th round generally in most of the mock drafts I've been seeing. So he's a guy that's easy to target as a strong 2nd running back candidate on most 12-team leagues. And the greatest, most promising news about Isaiah Crowell is that the Browns spent a ton of money this offseason signing offensive linemen. I think they spent upwards of $100 million on salary cap space. On offensive line upgrades, not per year in terms of like overall contract amounts, but still very strong sign that they want to focus on the running game a lot more this offseason. And the only competition that Isaiah Crowell is going to have is from his backup Duke Johnson, but that doesn't really scare me. Duke Johnson has had chances in the past to prove himself, and he really hasn't done much of that. So I believe Isaiah Crowell is going to be the guy this season for the Cleveland Browns. I think he's going to be the best guy in their offense, so good guy to target in your fantasy drafts if he falls to you in the 4th round especially. So he's a guy that I will be targeting. I think you guys should be happy doing the same, and yeah. As for my top 10 ranking list, that's going to be it. Real quick, though, I wanted to toss in a couple of guys that just barely didn't make the list. Lamar Miller right there. Todd Gurley is also right there, but those 2 guys are dangerous because they kind of, flopped last season. So those are a couple dangerous guys that you really could take in the 3rd round, but I really wouldn't recommend it. So those guys are there. Christian McCaffrey is an interesting pick, but who knows how he's going to be used. And a guy I would really avoid is DeMarco Murray because he's getting older, and Derrick Henry is coming up in the Tennessee Titans offense, and he's going to cut into DeMarco Murray's time a lot. So I would not be touching DeMarco Murray, just especially because he's going in the early 2nd round. I would not waste a 2nd round pick on him unless DeMarco Murray falls to me in the 3rd round. But yeah, that was my top 10 running back list. Let me know what you guys think. I'm pretty sure I'm going to be doing this same thing for wide receivers next week, and then, quarterbacks, tight ends, and all that good stuff. Then I'll just be doing like mock draft analysis, all that good stuff, all that good fantasy stuff. So let me know what you guys think of this series, and yeah, thanks for watching the video, guys, and I'll see all of you in the next one. Peace out. See you guys later.